IVM.
People with good credit score, Cred has some rewards for you. A credit card payment platform, the Cred app basically rewards you for paying your bills on time. If you have a credit score of 750 or above and have a credit card, download the Cred app to make your credit card payment experience rewarding. You will get reminders, statement analysis to know about hidden charges, and even get credit coins every time you pay your bill. You can use these coins to avail jackpots and cashbacks on the app, and even get discounts on their hand-picked curation of electronics, food and beverages, luxury travel, and many more offers. Folks, welcome to Paisa Vaisa, brought to you by Cred, the most rewarding credit card bill payments app. I'm your host Anupam Gupta, B50 on Twitter, and my guest today is Ujjwal Jain, founder and CEO at Wealth Desk. Ujjwal, welcome to Paisa Vaisa. Thank you so much for doing this for our listeners. Quick intro to Wealth Desk, what it does for our listeners who haven't heard of Wealth Desk. All yours.
Hey Anupam, thanks for providing me an opportunity to be part of this podcast and bring some perspectives for your listeners on direct stock and ETF investing. And coming to Welldesk, like we founded in 2016, and we are slightly different from any other startups. We've been bootstrapped for the first 4 years of our business. We were focusing on building our core platform and the product market fit. And it's only recently we raised our first pre-Series A funding. As a platform, we have largely been a B2B2C investment technology platforms that actually enables portfolio-based investing on top of direct stocks and ETFs for retail investors. So we create a framework around which on direct stock and ETF portfolio as a platform, we enable that for the retail investor on top of broking. Now, as a platform on the B2B front, we power asset management through SEBI registered investment advisors, enabling them to actually launch and manage direct equities and ETF based portfolios, which we call as wealth baskets, and make this portfolio accessible to retail investors on top of consumer platform of the brokers. So
Nice.
essentially we are driving the wealth management on top of broking on top of these wealth baskets.
Super. Didn't know that you guys are just 4 years old and that also bootstrapped. So, that's good to know. Okay. So let's start, right? In a recent article for Business World, that you've written, you showed, you wrote about how you feel that mutual funds are not the best vehicle for us. Let's start from there, using why you think the current environment for retail investors, probably for our listeners, is either broken or is not right. And let's go particularly in mutual funds. Why is that?
So I just want to clear one point. So it's not that mutual funds are not the best vehicle for us. I mean, but I think India is at the cusp of like some major transformation push, both on the product side where we see mutual funds, which is largely driven from the fact that on the distribution side now consumers can actually access better products and can have better transparency in terms of what they're investing in because of broking opening up. So now if I push this further up into the fund management layer, that is where now the comparison comes to mutual funds. Like, why is there any mutual fund, why you need to have an RIA portfolio? We have so many large cap, mid cap, small cap, and bunch of other themes, and now ETFs is also picking up in the passive space, which are also AMC led now. So the fundamental question is that, I mean, there are a lot of things where mutual funds are right because they essentially are structured in a way which provides diversification by design, so which is fundamental to actually create long-term wealth in equities. But the larger problem is that because of the fund structures have been over the years and the regulatory landscape over the years on how you classify mutual funds and how funds are structured in terms of managing their expense ratio for the larger retail community and the kind of portfolios they could create, like the schemes they could create, there's a lot of restrictions around what they can do, what they cannot do. There is a very strong opportunity at hand for RIAs to actually fill that gap. It's like an augmentation of mutual fund industry. It's not like completely replacing the mutual fund industry, where what we say is that if you are on broking platform and you want to do direct stock investing and ETF investing, you actually tend to actually experiment more versus your mutual fund investment, where your behavioral mind is more serious versus your direct stock, because there you end up doing some adventures in high exposure into concentrated stocks, or may invest in ETFs in a very wrong way and things like that. But with RIA coming into picture, what happens is that just like how mutual funds have institutionally created a very strong wealth management ecosystem for the larger retail community, using RIA as a vehicle, WealthDesk now enables that these RIAs can create far superior managed direct stock and ETF portfolio for the retail investors, which essentially could serve their both long-term investment needs as well as short-term investment needs. Now, when it comes to long-term, you can have a balanced ETF asset allocated portfolio comprising of stock, gold.
I wanted to, we'll get to how WealthDesk actually solves all these problems. I mean, the
Sure.
entire second half is dedicated towards this. What
Okay.
I would want is for you to explain the problem, or like you call the use case for our listeners. We'll have the discussion on what exactly WealthDesk does to solve the problem that mutual funds create for people, right? So if you're done with the mutual funds part, I actually now want to get into, active investments. If we can move on to that. We spoke about mutual fund, which is pretty much active. Now, if I was to take an inference or a conclusion from what you're saying, there are problems in passive investments also, ETFs also. Even that's not ideal for us. So we've covered active and why there's a problem there. Could you explain to us ETFs? What's wrong there?
So actually, there's no problem per se with either active. So mutual funds are active. That does not mean they underperform the benchmark. It's not the active nature of the mutual fund that they underperform. It could be because the sheer size. Because for example, in large cap, now you can't do too much of active fund management now. Largely, if you follow benchmark or a Nifty 50, you are better off versus investing in a large cap mutual fund. But you go deeper into mid cap, small cap, the active fund management still add value, add alpha at the mutual fund level. But there, the sheer size of money coming into the space actually at time become detrimental to performance for the fund manager. So which eventually boils down to retail investors for underperformance. Now coming to the passive side, now ETFs are great vehicle to actually solve at least the Nifty top 50 500 universe problem, where if you invest in a more passively managed benchmark backed portfolio, you are better off, you at a very low cost at 10-20 bips, and you are good. But the problem is that if you come now again take the ETF to a larger retail ecosystem, now if let's say we talk about Nifty 50, now in last 20 years Nifty 50 has given a worst drawdown of 59%. Can you think not even like 20% of Indians can handle that kind of volatility if they invested in a Nifty 50 ETF? And imagine if they move that money from a very serious FD or a debt kind of product to a Nifty 50 ETF, assuming that it's a very safe vehicle to actually get into equities. So actually that is the problem. So passive ETFs actually are a great instrument to actually invest in the market, but you need to wrap that up in a very beautifully managed asset allocation portfolio. For example, let's say if you want to build a very large India focused portfolio on ETFs, then specifically let's say we're talking about a conservative profile which cannot take risk beyond 10% of volatility on the return side. Let's say your returns cannot go beyond 10% or 8% or 9%. There, between gold, debt, equities, and within equities they are beautiful RIA based portfolios in India have been created on our platform, where Nifty 50 has a very negative correlation to let's say Nasdaq 100. So if you add Nasdaq 100 to a Nasdaq 100 ETF with a Nifty 50 ETF along with gold and debt, you create a very well diversified ETF based wealth baskets at a worst drawdown of 7-8%. So these ETF vehicles are great, but for a larger retail community, the asset allocation is something which need to be bring at a very mass retail level, which wealth baskets do it beautifully at a very low cost model, where RIAs comes very handy. They create and make that available at the retail investor level.
Okay, so if I've understood you right, the problem is not in mutual funds or in ETF. The problem is in the investor. They are absolutely not able to choose properly, right? And when they, so if we now move to what you just said, the RIA model, because retail investors make certain mistakes in mutual funds and ETFs, although those vehicles might be great or whatever it is, but it's the investors for whom the choice is a problem. So the solution that you're offering is RIAs or SEBI registered investment advisors, right? So let's understand your point of view out here for our listeners, because in the same Business World article, you mentioned that RIAs actually offer better risk adjusted returns to the users. So please explain this concept.
Yeah, so for example, if you look at the mutual fund investment like penetration in larger India, which is mostly distributor led, not from an investment objective led. Like obviously there are good players who do that rightly, but there is also a market where the the compatibility aspect is not well taken, and you end up investing in too many mutual fund schemes within the same large cap category, mid cap category. And if you look at demat accounts of customers, you might see over diversification, which is detrimental to the portfolio, or they have invested in schemes which actually are not fit for them. But when it comes to RIA based portfolios, where the focus is actually, first of all, the customer is paying the money to the RIA to actually invest in that portfolio, that transparency is fundamental to the business model because inherent in the platform. And second thing is that these underlying stocks or ETFs sits in your own demat account, complete transparency. So what happens is that if a advice RIA led portfolio is something which customer is looking at, now first of all customers understand the disclaimers around that this is my profile, this is basis which I'm investing in this. So let's say if I look at long term portfolios, they can invest in a very good momentum based portfolio which has an element flavor of, let's say, volatility adjustments. So which can actually at a very low cost can give you a portfolio return compared to a very premium PMS which is not available to a retail guy. So point is at a very low cost, so that is being democratized at platform level. The second thing is that when it comes to ETF investing, now I if would have started on my own with a Nifty 50 ETF, and let's say just pre-COVID, for example, I would have seen a volatility. I might have exited that ETF at a very wrong time. But let's say if I would have been in a managed portfolio model, like typically Ultra HNI, who get a call from their advisors that please hold on to it, it's your behavioral bias, don't get trapped, stick to the volatility, the longer run is good. These in retail customers don't get that kind of high-handed relationship. But purely on a platform framework level, if RIA can manage a portfolio and create that ecosystem for the retail investor, his investment life cycles in these ETFs, asset allocated between different gold, debt, and all, and intelligently weighted and made that available in their demat account, and when they are rebalanced or they in any panic, they get the right information content to actually stay with the curve and don't get trapped to their behavioral biases. This actually eventually gives into a very optimal risk adjusted return. And also at the portfolio level, for example, if you invest in 2 3 mid cap mutual funds, a lot of customers think that they have diversified really well, but honestly if you see, the concentrated exposures are to specific bunch of stocks. Like if you look at large cap mutual funds like HDFC Bank and maybe Reliance or ITC would cover like 20 30 40% of the portfolio, like hypothetically speaking. I might be wrong factually, but when it comes to portfolio based investing on direct stock and ETF through RIAs, your diversification is actually seamlessly available on the platform because all your stock sits in your demat account. So you see your real exposures across RIA portfolios and your specific nuanced investment needs. Like for example, I today want to invest in an MNC pack which has a momentum trend, for example. Now I don't know which are the right MNC stocks, because technically you can say Vedanta is an MNC because it's a foreign subsidiary, has a, but from a business standpoint it might not be. But the RIA who's creating that MNC pack with a flavor of momentum and ensuring volatility, he will give you a better risk adjusted pack to invest in that theme. And what happens is that these are managed, so you don't make any, your behavioral mistakes are mitigated by design, and eventually you have a better risk adjusted return. And diversification bit is very well taken care in these cases.
Okay, so before we end this first part of our episode, I just want to ask one thing, because you mentioned how distribution is, probably an issue out here, the way that mutual funds are distributed, and people are not able to make the right choice. Okay, and so what? So okay, at Paisa for the last 4 years, we've interviewed a whole range of people. Some of them are online platforms that help you choose mutual funds. Some of them are do all kinds of different things. The conversations also that I've had with people on social media, the fact that today there is this entire body of knowledge for everyone to access. Okay, whether it is Quora, whether it is YouTube, whether it is blogs, Twitter, whatever it is, there is enough information now for me as a retail investor to make a choice. So I want to understand the distribution issue with you, because if I am going to one of these platforms that sell mutual funds to me, I signed up because they were doing the decision making for me. So how can that be a problem? I mean, if you're saying that the problem lies in the choice of mutual funds or ETFs or whatever, could be stocks, whatever it is, then these platforms are offering certain value to me. I'm hoping, like, if I choose 10 different mid caps, somebody, some behavioral thing there would say, listen, you shouldn't do that. So what exactly, is that also a problem, do you think, or what's happening out here?
No, that's a great thing. See, and see, one thing is actually the fact that even brokers today are creating nudges actually if you invest in any liquid stock, which is a great thing, like technically detrimental to their business model, but they are doing it. Similarly, on the mutual funds, I think there are a lot of digital only platforms which are trying to, first of all, giving you direct mutual fund, which means there is no vested interest. Secondly, they are creating the right package structures in terms of you're focusing on a tax saver, retirement, and even AMCs are realizing that push, and they are actually now marketing more around your objectives versus what they want to sell as a scheme, which is a very beautiful thing. But they are still, I think there are nuances beyond mutual funds which can be solved.
Sure.
Which actually, let's say you want to invest in specific theme sectors. Now today, like we are talking about, let's say MSCI of India being built on our platform with such beautiful factor based smart beta portfolios at a very low cost model, which is a bridge between active and passive. Like you can invest in a thematic portfolio which has an overlay of momentum, volatility adjusted, so that you can create a very premium portfolio at a very low cost for the retail investors. Now India would not have seen that. And if you ask, mutual funds are way behind because they have their own like regulatory structures and scheme structures, and within which they have to work. They also need to look at the sheer size at capacity stand. I mean, these are some of the things which we are also dealing as a platform today. If an RIA invests, and I think that's something which I've read some of the places where and listened to you at places where mutual fund is a very large like ecosystem, 30 lakh crores, and we have huge volume. Now today, if a mid cap mutual fund manager wants to sell 2% of a portfolio in a specific stock, he knows that he can't do that tactical move because the market is not reserved, and those actually impacts the returns. Now, is that a problem? Is that a fallacy of the fund manager? No, but the structures are that CL size is so big. Now,
Sure.
RIAs actually mitigates that by distributing the retail money at different pockets, different investment strategies, and eventually push the larger ecosystem to create better products and serve the investment needs of the retail customers. So I think both complement really well. Like today, if you ask me tax saver mutual fund, I still go with tax saver mutual fund. But we know factually, we just saw the report that they have underperformed. 64% have underperformed the benchmark. But generally, if I would have invested in an FD, would have underperformed. I would have been a lesser, given me lesser return. But I still stick to a tax saver because I think in the 3 year equities will give me better return, but there still is an opportunity cost. So I think we need to talk about asset allocation, we need to talk about opportunity cost, we need to talk about the expense ratio, and we need to see if at the end customer level I can create a more nuanced investment portfolios and can serve their wealth creation needs. Is there a market opportunity out there for the retail investors to get these portfolios? I think we're trying to solve that problem,
and
I
we are
think.
going to go exactly into that. No, go on. Sorry, please complete.
And these lot of these feedbacks will go into the AMC scheme where we'll see better ETFs coming, so that better well baskets can be created. So that feedback loop has started.
Excellent. And we're going to go exactly into the product that Ujjwal has got, which offers the nuance returns or the nuance experience that he's talking about. So don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back. The Wealth Desk Special, Ujjwal Jain, founder and CEO at Wealth Desk. On the other side of this break, we are going to talk about exactly how Wealth Desk solves the problem that we spoke about in this first half. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back after this great convenience break.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you are not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We'd like to thank the sponsors on the network this week. Thank you so much to Cred, CED, and Global Victoria. Without you guys, this stream would not be possible.
And welcome back to this special episode, the Wealth Desk Special with Ujjwal Jain, founder and CEO at Wealth Desk. In the first part of this episode, we spoke about how there are certain issues in mutual funds, ETFs, and other stuff that might not be ideal for the retail investor. That's people like me, people like you who are listening into this episode. Okay, Ujjwal, so now let's understand Wealth Desk better. Okay, if I have understood what you offer customized themes. So in that sense, you're making the decision for the user. So my first question to you is, how do you explain the themes to your user? In the sense that, how if I sign on to Wealth Desk, how do I know maybe that an MNC theme is better than a PSU theme? Let's go into exactly what your product offers now.
So the couple of things where I want to bring is that Welldesk as a platform is the enabler. So we have the RIAs on one side who actually manufacture this portfolio. So they hold the relevant licenses to use Welldesk business platform to create these portfolios, these different themes, investment objectives, and bunch of investment strategies. And on the consumer side, these portfolios are available on the broking channel. Now to your question, where how do Welldesk actually solve that purpose if I want to invest MNC versus PSU? Now the thing is, as a platform, let's say if you are on a broker platform, generally brokers who position our wealth baskets advisory led portfolios on top to retail investors, generally they enable their customers now to actually see where their investment objectives are, where their risk return profiles are, what their objectives are with their direct stock and ETF portfolio, which has actually one of the good things that has happened started now, versus let's say you end up buying some penny stock, you are actually putting money in some right portfolios. So that thing has happened. Second thing is to your larger question, which is MNC versus PSU. So the focus is that if you look at the stock investing journey of a customer, now they generally get attracted to themes, market movements, sectoral moves, some tactical ideas coming in, and general trends coming in. So they eventually start to find the right stock. So what happens is that if the RIAs know how the tactical money needs to move in the equity space, okay, so what they do, they create these right themes. So today, let's say post budget, there's a large hot money that's gonna go in PSU theme, and then there's a good tactical alpha creation there possible. So that PSU wealth basket is there for the end customer to actually achieve that with wealth creation objectives. But moment they see that there's a large trend in MNC, for example, a 3-year, 4-year multi-growth story is there in MNC. So MNC theme is there. So it is not about whether it is MNC versus PSU, but it is about when to invest in what themes and sectors for your tactical portfolio. And these some of the things actually is very beautifully done if in at a platform level, where the entire value chain from RIA to the end customers is streamlined, they execute, they rebalance whenever there's a change. These things create real wealth on direct stock platforms, which is not easy, because because if you see a lot of demat accounts I have seen in the past, like people have invested in, let's say, one large cap 60 40 50% of their savings in their life, and they have taken that adventure ride without understanding the tail risk. All that is actually gradually diminishing.
Sure. But so just to understand that, it's a broker who understands my risk return and then offers me the wealth basket in response to my needs, right? So he's the one who's actually going to be interacting with me to understand what I want and offer a good wealth basket in response to that need. Did I understand that right?
No. So brokers enable the transactional pipeline, like typically anybody like Zerodha or a Motilal would do, but risk profile is inherent to the platform experience. So when you come as a customer on a broker platform, you do your own risk profiling and you are suggested based on your risk profile, and then you take a call. Now, one engagement model that RIE enables on the same pipeline is that they can actually, basis your risk profile, they can provide you the right investment objectives or asset allocation in for your larger equities investment, and then you gradually tend to execute those things, because as an advisor you can't do execution in the client account. Finally, client has to do all of that. So at the end of the day, client is at the epicenter of executing all of these things.
Great. Okay, so now let's get to that piece, right?
Yes.
Explain, if you could just help me understand how the RIAs give my investments much better attention, better transparency, and therefore I'm hoping to deliver good returns. Okay, for example, do they interact with me or explain to me, okay, we are going to buy or sell this? Like, if I see that an RIA on Welldesk has got a certain theme, let's say that we believe that that the RIA believes, and probably even I believe, that India is going to do phenomenally well in the next 10 years, and I want to build or he's building a portfolio for me. So how will he interact with me, or how will he cover that gap that I don't get in a mutual fund? So because you mentioned a lot of times that it is transparent, there are extremely high disclosures, the stocks sit in my demat account. So just walk us through all of this.
Yeah, so let's name your theme, like Make in India. There's a theme on our platform, and it's a multi-year growth theme. So point is, so for example, so one of the things that is a hallmark of digital platforms is that it leaves a trail of everything that you do. So for example, right from your first investment in that wealth basket, which is given by the RIA on one of the broker platforms, you subscribe to that, executing your risk profile and end user agreements and paying the fee. Now, first of all, you're paying the fee, so you are judgmental from the very first day that you have to perform, you have to deliver, because there's no implicit cost here. And the second thing is that once they invest in these portfolios, they track everything in the underlying portfolio on a real-time basis. So just like how they invest in direct stock, they track their returns. In the same way, on the broker platform and these portfolios, they track their return on a real-time basis. So transparency is real-time. The underlying portfolio is real-time. Now, RIAs, because the idea is that most of the RIAs on our platform, especially the top ones and who have really been able to drive that systematic portfolio investing on our platform, they have a rebalancing frequency which is systematic in nature, like typically how our passive index works, so which is monthly rebalancing or a weekly rebalancing or a semi quarterly rebalancing. So what happens is that, given the process is such creates such a discipline inherently at the customer level, that you have to, at specific, whenever you as per your investment dates, you get your rebalancing changes. So when the rebalancing changes comes, they know for the fact, when they invested, the thesis said that this is as per this philosophy, and you have to execute the change in the portfolio at this time interval. So they get the notifications that they approve these changes in the underlying portfolio and mirror the portfolio of the advisor in their own demat account. And the good part is that they actually tend to feel empowered in that case, because see, they really feel that I'm controlling my investments. At the end of the advisor is controlling, but at the same time, and it's a very important behavioral bias which we need to mitigate, because see, most of us believe that we are very smart, but actually we are not. We have a day job to do. Let somebody else manage your money. If it is at a low cost, this is the beauty of the business model. So where the RIs do that, and they enable that customer, that investor, that you are rebalancing your portfolio, you are executing, and it goes in your demat account, and everything, the entire buy sell changes are in your demat account, so you track your portfolio. And the comparison part, where we are trying to create a lot of standards, like first standards in terms of like making it globally acceptable also, is like how we compare to benchmarks, total return indexing, where your dividends are incorporated along with the comparable benchmark. And the idea is that bring more customized benchmarks. See, one of the places where actually we lack as a country versus, let's say, developed countries, the fact our benchmark ecosystem is not that sophisticated. So today, if you create a portfolio and you benchmark it to something random, now technically you are not doing apple to apple comparison. So I cannot say whether you have really given me genuine returns or not. So that market opportunity, then this is that systematic improvement also we are trying to do. So what we are now pushing to our RI is that I need to ensure this is the only benchmark that against which I will compare your portfolio, so that my customer knows that they are investing in the right portfolio. So these things are beautiful things. I mean, that actually pushes the ecosystem.
Okay, so last couple of questions as we wrap up this this episode. So could you just walk us through the RIA on the how do you sign up RIAs on your platform, or is your platform open to pretty much all the RIAs in India, or do you screen them? How will I, as someone who doesn't know anything, how to judge one RIA versus the other? How does that help me?
So from an RIA point of view, we have a very, very stringent like criteria to onboard specific RIA. So initially when we launched the platform to the brokers first, like way back when the advisory distribution related regulations were not very streamlined, which has happened in last 6-8 months. Before that, so when it opened it to the brokers who have their own research arms, they created their own wealth baskets and opened it to retail investors. Gradually what happened, broker wanted to stick to distribution, and they told us that we want to have your RIAs distribute to our customers. So when we got RIAs onto our platform, so one of the things where we were very clear is that we don't want to create an overcrowded portfolio ecosystem and just to be like a me too to mutual fund industry, like where there are a bunch of good schemes, good fund managers doing great stuff. We are not going to actually say that this RIA will actually perform better than this, let's say, large cap fund manager or a market cap fund manager. So we actually started scouting for RIAs or incubating RIAs who actually drive the larger ecosystem. For example, Quantech Capital, OpenQ, like they focus only on smart beta or factor based portfolios. Then so we now coming to their like vetting whether they can be retail ready at a large market level. So we have followed a lot of qualitative, quantitative metrics, how they back their data for research, whether they have look ahead bias or not, survivorship bias or not, comparison to benchmarks, and then capacity strength, whether they can handle 5 crore, 1,000 crores, let's say the market demands increases. Lot of things goes in our due diligence process when we onboard an RIA for large retail customers. Now, apart from that, we have a model where an RIA comes on our platform, they launch their portfolios, and we open a consumer microsite for their customers so that they can enable their retail customer base to actually start investing in their portfolios through any of the online brokers on the platform. For example, Zerodha, Upstocks of the world are there on our platform where you can transact through them anytime through the RIA's consumer platform. But when it comes to larger India, the screening criteria that we follow is as good as like how would an AMC would look at when they launch a scheme. Now that's the level where we go into. There are a lot of nitty-gritties that go into it, because see, from a background point of view, though I'm a computer science guy with a CFA background, I really believe in that idea that obviously in the shorter term we might not be 100% like global standard in terms of how we create the right performance benchmarks, investment benchmarks from an end customer point of view, but gradually we want to push the curve, and there we focus a lot of that with our RIAs, and it's a very stringent process. Yeah.
Okay, so last question, just in the interest of transparency and disclosures, if you could help our listeners understand the costs involved out here, right? Because um, mutual funds have certain costs, ETF have certain costs. Given that your model is B to B to C, could you just tell our listeners each and every cost on a process basis, like possibly what is the sign up, if there is any sign up cost, is there a recurring cost, is there a transaction cost, is there a demat cost, and if might be that you might could put this in perspective as compared to, say, maybe owning a mutual fund or buying stocks directly. So first let's get to the costing part, the various components, and then the comparison part.
Yeah. So on the costing part, so the new component that gets introduced at the customer level where they have to pay is the fee. These are fee-based portfolios. So you have to pay a subscription fee, which could be have a renewal frequency of 6 months, for example. So now this fee, now the good part is SEBI has now very well documented the fee component of an RIA, which could be either asset under advisory base. So for example, if I invest 1 lakh rupees and my fee is 1%, I have to pay 1,000 rupees every 6 months, for example. Now, but there's a cap of 2.5% at the annual level. Like, so that's a standard which SEBI has set. Then there's another standard that if you're charging a fixed fee, the max you can charge to a family account or an individual client is 1,25,000. Now, these are the top level numbers, but when it comes to actual cost to the end customer, we generally have seen that most of our portfolios on our platform are generally on a fixed fee, so completely dealing to the idea of how much money you bring to these well baskets. So idea is to gradually focus on penetrating the product to a larger market versus trying to make more money or make a decent 1%, 2% from a specific set of customers. So these RIAs rather focus on fixed fee model, which is a very low cost. So you can assume that idea is the standards are like, obviously we are not there, right? Maybe is to keep everything under sub 50 basis points or sub 0.5% on the total cost basis, where including your demat cost and the broking cost and your fee cost eventually, because the broking fee and all that is what you do with your broker, which is where there's no RIA has no control on, and they don't, and Wealdesk platform does not have, because it's your broking account with that broker. So that is a cost that you eventually still need to incur. But gradually what brokers are anyways, the broking is getting commodity and the costs are shrinking. So the fee component becomes reasonable for an end customer even after the execution cost at the broker level. So there the idea is that how can we push it to a level where it is sub 50 basis point eventually, and a customer gets a very good portfolio and not too much complicated for their understanding ki main kitna paisa de raha hu. It's like very easy to understand, like mostly fixed fee model. And eventually we will be talking about that the larger ecosystem is being pushed to that vanguard moment where we are creating very good specific investment objectives, aligned portfolios at a very low cost, easily executed in your account, all under at a very, very nominal cost. So yeah.
Okay, and how would this be better or would compare to the mutual fund model or ETF model, or if I'm buying stocks directly, what would be to just so that our listeners understand this.
So let's say when you invest in a direct stock, so obviously you just incur your broking cost, but what you incur also is that you get into the systematic market risk where you're investing directly in the stock, and you need to deal with the COVID moments, the tail risk, the budgets, the market movements, the company specific risk, all that eventually does not generate you wealth. Now, if you pay a nominal fee to a very smart person whose day job is this only, he creates a portfolio for you and make sure that you get your wealth creation objectives met. That additional cost that you pay actually get adjusted very well in your long-term wealth creation because you make more money. And the second thing is when it comes to ETFs. Now, ETFs, obviously, when you invest directly, you are incurring your execution cost only at the broker, and maybe because of ETF has liquidity issues right now, so the market impact cost could be high. But let's say even after all of that, let's say in a wealth basket, there's a bunch of ETFs that you invest and you pay a fee for that portfolio to the RIA. The good part is that now you are investing in an ETF basket, which actually the weightages are managed in your account in a way that you achieve your investment objectives, and you need to delink. Even if you delink yourself from markets and what is happening around, you still have a managed portfolio, so you pay a nominal fee for that. So that fee component is around your returns objectives, and it's a very good alignment for the retail community.
Fantastic. Is there anything else? How can our listeners get back to you if they have any questions? What is the website? Are you there on social media? If our listeners have any questions, where can they ask you that?
So we are always open on through our Welldesk.in website, which is we and any of the broker platforms where our platform is onboarded. So we constantly engage in queries for our RIAs, for our broker teams as well as their customers. And at the individual level, I am always reachable. I'm more active on LinkedIn versus Twitter, but I am available at Jan Ujjwal. It's my Twitter handle, and also available on LinkedIn. And I always connect, even if somebody messages me through.
Fantastic,
LinkedIn.
Folks. A very dedicated and committed founder. I love that. Just love that. So that is a wrap on this episode of Paisa Vaisa. My guest, Ujjwal Jain, founder and CEO at Welldesk. Ujjwal, thank you so much for doing this for our listeners.
Thank you, Anupam. It's my pleasure to be actually part of your show. Actually,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
very kind of you. And listeners, if you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are IVM Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to reach out to me, I'm your host, Anupam Gupta, B50 on Twitter. And thank you so much for listening to Paisa Vaisa, brought to you by Cred, the most rewarding credit card bill payments app.
IVM